Hi, I'm Tyler, and this is the Fox Fellow Film Critics. In this episode of the show, we're going to be discussing the 12th in the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 movies, The Searchers, as well as the most recent DC Comics movie, Wonder Woman. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to our show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us today is the first of our two guests, Groupthink Productions executive producer Darrin Hummel.
Good evening.
Or vague time of day.
Exactly. Hello. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Sure thing. And our first discussion topic is John Wayne and John Ford's The Searchers. I assume you're very familiar with the works of John Ford, so...
Seen a lot of John Ford movies. This is one I've seen bits and pieces of before, but getting ready for this event, getting a chance to see the thing in its entirety, one of something that kind of struck me was like, I wish I could have seen this on a big screen.
Yeah.
Because if you take a look at the DVD cover, it says, filmed in VistaVision, which was one of those 50s things, but it was just, striking how big the scenery was. That John Ford shot it intentionally in what's called Monument Valley in Utah, Arizona, which is kind of funny because the thing's set in Texas and they're showing Utah and they're showing Arizona, but that's not, but that's not important right now. The idea was to show the majesty and the enormity of the West, and John Ford decided to do the shooting there. So that was just one of the most striking things, at least visually, of what he chose to do. We'll talk more in that in a minute.
Yeah, John Ford shot multiple films at Monument Valley, and that's became like one of his great visions of the West because it's absolutely beautiful. I don't even know how to describe it exactly. It's one of the most beautiful places in America, really, and that kind of reflects John Ford's vision because John Ford is a director who's very, very romantic in his view of the world. He has his films tend to express kind of a very old school kind of patriotism and religiosity and all these really old school ideas and he finds incredible optimism and humanity in most of his films. And this one he kind of takes the opposite route and finds a lot of cynicism and sees some of the darker sides of America. And it's about the plot of the story is about John Wayne, who's a former Confederate general wandering in the Old West, desperate to kill Comanches for reasons that aren't terribly well explained, right. But it's implied that he has this deep-seated hatred of the Indians, and he wants to take it out on them in the most violent way possible. At one point, he shoots out the eyes of a dead Native American who was already buried, and when he's asked why, he said, "Well, he can't go to the happy hunting ground that way." And he's just you get the sense this guy really hates it. And I've heard some people who just say the movie is trying to be racist, and I think it's not. It's the opposite. The movie is portraying that. I watched a lot of the interviews with people like Martin Scorsese, and there's a great documentary that came out a couple of years ago called directed by John Ford, where you got Spielberg and all these really huge directors talking about the film. And the film is very much aware of the things that are happening in this film. It's not just putting out this really insensitive character and letting him run free. It's punishing the character and letting us see his development and learning to kind of put some of that aside.
Exactly. So in just as visually it was a big movie, in terms of the message that it was doing, it was just as big as well. John Wayne is introduced 3 years after Appomattox. This is set in 1868. It starts the film then 3 years after the war ends. And he very clearly early on says, my loyalty is to the Confederate States of America. This is not a normal John Wayne role. He's not a pure art type good guy. Everybody is nuanced. There's hate from both sides. You see the hate from the Native Americans in terms of the atrocities that take place in the film. You see the atrocities that take place by the United States soldiers against the Native American tribes. There is hatred going back and forth. And big ideas, big concepts. One of the things we talked about getting ready for this was the fact that John Ford, there was a staple of actors. You see a John Ford movie, Ward Bond is likely going to be in that movie.
Harry Carey Jr., Cary Grant.
Right. So Ward Bond, he plays on one part, he's a captain in the Texas Rangers. He's also the local minister. And so the question is back and forth, so what hat do you have on during this conversation? Is this your preacher hat? Is this your law hat? You got your sheriff's hat on. So which hat, and he, when you're introduced, when he comes on the screen, Ward Bond at the beginning of the film, he's big. He has this enormous personality and character, just completely dominates the scene, and it only gets tempered a little bit when John Wayne comes in a little bit later on, and again, you're here as a preacher, you're here as a lawman, why are you here today to talk to me? And I just, there were big thoughts that were taking place, and what really is a little bit striking is in terms of having that debate going on in the movie, 1956. We're still 10 years away from major civil rights legislation in the United States. We're still in the midst of Jim Crow. All of these things are taking place and is being played out on the big screen. I just thought it was, from that perspective, that really brought some additional insight.
Scorsese was saying that this was right at the cusp of the studios starting to break down, because early 1960s is when the studios just started falling apart because they could not keep up with the times. They didn't know how to make films that were getting people getting into the youth, and that was right around the time Easy Rider and stuff like that came out, and that was really appealing to young people. So, like this, you can just kind of see this stuff cracking through the system where John Ford, he's largely dismissed nowadays by people who aren't like hardcore film critics or over the age of 60, and you can definitely see like this guy is very aware of everything that his films say and that everything his films are expressing, and he's trying to, I don't know if he's necessarily self-critiquing, but he's trying to kind of express a different idea than usual.
Oh, absolutely. The ideas behind it. One of the pieces that made this film unique as well is the fact that it didn't whitewash things that happened.
No.
But in a previous segment of this very show, we talked about Alien and how all the gore and violence is sprayed across the screen, and John Ford intentionally did not show those things. Okay? So the idea of the searchers, well, they're searching for a teenage woman that had been stolen, basically John Wayne's character's niece, Ethan's niece, two nieces actually. One was teenage, one was prepubescent, and trying to find them. That's the search. And John Wayne was at a campsite. He was off doing something. He comes back and he's visually shaken by what he'd just seen.
Well, it's implied to the scene
Right.
that he comes back to the home. There's the very classic image of the house burning, which anyone who's a film historian will know is this is the Star Wars shot where he comes home and he sees his house has been burned down, and his family is dead. This is exactly that scene, but implied to be several times worse. We don't see what's in the house, but we kind of get the sense either the family has been killed or they've been assaulted. Yeah. They've had one of the worst fates possible come to them, and John Wayne, the Duke, is too shaken to go inside the house and look at what just happened.
Right. And the same thing happened later on when when he finds the body of the teenage daughter, that it's implied by his actions just unspeakable things happened to her up until including her death. And he comes back to the campsite and he's beside himself. And it's like, where's your coat? Well, I left it there. And so then we learn later on that he used his jacket, he used his greatcoat to wrap that teenage girl in that coat so that she would have some dignity in her death.
Yeah. Again, this all comes from a place of nuance, and it comes from John Ford's ability to express a story that's very different from the normal ones. Because usually, I don't want to say he's unnuanced, because a lot of his films tended to play the Native Americans as bad guys a little bit more straight than usual. This is probably one of the only other times, maybe Red River was the other one, I think, that you see John Wayne as the bad guy. he's always the hero, and just seeing him in this role, it's you hear people talk about it who saw it in the theaters, and they were like noticeably shaken watching the film.
Yeah, from the very beginning of the film, John Wayne is not the normal character that you would expect him to be. That he states himself in a certain way, and I assume we'll touch on how the film ends in just a minute. But clearly, he shapes himself up, and the expectation that he presents himself is he's kind of the outsider, that he's there, but he's not really part of it. So when he visits his brother and his family in the film, it is as, I'm kind of the guy that's here, and it's like, do you really want me here? And throughout he has kind of that outsider role, and which continues even to the very final frames of the picture.
Yeah. Like the secret to all great westerns is that all great westerns are about the end of something, and like for a lot of them, it's when you think about like the Leone westerns, Once Upon a Time in the West, or All Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. These are films about characters that are living outside of society, and through their actions, they make themselves irrelevant to the world because the world needs to be civilized and this chaos needs to be fixed. And eventually, they have to kind of lead the world to a place of law and order. So, yeah, The Searchers is definitely one of the best symbols of that in filmmaking. That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us shortly where we'll be able to talk about the upcoming DC film, Wonder Woman. Stay tuned.
Does this help at all?
Anything helps, ma'am. Just try to get some sleep now.
I can't sleep.
Yeah, me neither. I'm on my way.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Joining us for the second segment is Adam, better known as BroTron, who's been a regular guest on our podcast. Welcome back to the show.
Hi,
welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. I mean, anytime. Yeah.
Sure. Well, you were on the podcast originally, so
Yeah. Back in the good old days of what was it, late 2016 or early mid 2016 or something?
like 1 year ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted you on specifically for the Wonder Woman discussion for a very good reason that I think you're aware of. We fought for the better part of a year over whether or not Batman vs. Superman was a good year. Like if you can go back and view our podcasts, and we the night of the movie coming out, we saw it, and I recorded a half-hour moping session in the car on my H6, and you really liked the movie. I really did not like the movie, and we would not stop. We kept going back and forth on that for a very long time.
Oh yeah, that's because we're very different in the cinegraphic era that we are in right now. Me and you don't really see at the same level. I am not an analytical viewer when it comes to movies and stuff. I just watch movies as they are. If I like them, whether they're Marvel movies, DC movies, as we're about to talk to today, or regular action films. I don't really get to go see a lot of outside movies other than that section, but you are a very analytical person when it comes to movies, because you're, i.e., a critic, and I am not. So I don't absorb the movie as you would. I absorb the movie as in, hey, there's a lot of action. I like action. There's a lot of sci-fi going on, a lot of moving parts. I like that.
Yeah, and I come at it from an angle of I also read the comics. I also I basically get as much media as I can, and yeah. I try to have a wide breadth of things, even though most people who I talk to they'll ask me questions like, "Hey, have you seen this movie?" No, I haven't. You haven't seen this movie, and you're a film critic? Yeah,
that's what we go into and stuff like that. Like, I can't remember what movie it was. Yeah. Actually, I don't even think it's you. It's one of my friends at work. But that's for another time.
Let's not embarrass me too much right now. But yeah, so I get a text from you about 1 o'clock in the morning last night. You really liked Wonder Woman.
I did. I very well enjoyed it. I saw it at 9:30 last night. I got out of the movie theater around, it's like 12:30, 12:20, 12:30 something. And I was just, it wasn't like a normal. Not really. There's not a lot of DC movies that are out nowadays and stuff, but they're
Well, now
starting
there
to.
are, but
Well, in a sense that I've seen, that I can critique on. This was a definite change from Batman vs Superman. This was a whole 180 twist from Batman vs Superman in the sense of how it was filmed, the lighting. Obviously,
it's more colorful
yeah,
for much of the time.
Well, I wouldn't say more color.
For the first half, at least.
Yeah.
When they're on the Amazon
Yeah,
island.
and then it goes to that real dull, like World War One or World War. Yeah, it was World War One. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That sense of, hey, this is really, really far back in time, whereas the Amazonians are really advanced. And you got all this coloring, you got all these like advanced moving parts, all these like, I don't know, like Greek architecture and stuff like that, because they were referencing the Greek gods. But it's a whole 180 twist from how you would see as like Metropolis.
It's a 180 twist from just from Batman growling in Batman vs Superman.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman does not growl at any point during this movie. Like,
Except for getting hit.
well, my first reaction, and I've made a reference to this a couple times publicly, my first reaction upon seeing the film is, how nice is it that we have a DC movie that isn't Batman that works? Because every film...
Or Superman for this.
Well, think of it. Every single really good DC Comics movie since the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie has been Batman. There's 4 Tim Burton Batman movies. There's been 2 post-Christopher Reeves Superman movies, both of which are average. There's been a bad Green Lantern movie. There's been the Dark Knight trilogy, which everyone loves. There's been the Lego Batman movie, which everyone loves. And then there's been the Snyderverse movies, most of which have Batman in it to some degree. And this is the first one where the Batman is kept to a minimum, even though he does get a brief letter cameo.
Yeah.
Yeah, Batman is so important to DC that they can't even like keep him out from Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, and stuff. Like I feel like Wayne Enterprises is going to be like the Stan Lee cameo of the DC universe. It's going to be in all movies because it's Wayne Corporation.
Yeah.
It's just there.
What's
He's everywhere.
What's your superpower?
I'm rich. No, but I enjoyed the film very much so. It was a nice turn of events to see a different side of the DC universe now.
A functional.
Yes, a functional. And now we're going to start diving into the Justice League, which is, again, one of the biggest. It's Marvel DC.
Yeah.
It's the DC Avengers. I can't wait.
Yeah, and we're going to get the Aquaman movie next year.
Yep.
Which is going to be interesting because it's from James Wan, who did The Conjuring and Furious 7. So, yeah, very good director. So that actually has a little hope for it. And
I've actually seen The Conjuring too.
You have it or you haven't?
I have.
Okay, good.
I have. I saw that in I think it came out when I was in 7th grade.
Sure.
I want to say.
I think they were in high school for us, but
No,
whatever.
it wasn't high school. I was
Okay.
definitely in elementary. Wow. No, we were definitely in junior high. We were definitely in junior high. It had to be.
We go far back.
Yeah, very far back. Well, 6th grade?
Something like that.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think you went to. You didn't go to Fox Chase, did you?
No.
No, I didn't know.
Anyway, in terms of Wonder Woman as a movie, this is definitely the first breadth of the DC extended universe that I think it works. It's not, everyone's overrating the film, I think, because everyone's saying it's the best thing ever, it's better than all the Marvel movies, and it's just like, it's as good as some of the best Marvel movies. It's a really good B movie, it's a really good superhero movie. There are obvious nitpicks I can point at it that say that this is a good movie, it's not a great movie. And I think part of the problem is just that everyone's so ready for DC to work that they're just going to be like, it finally works really well, guys. I'm so happy. And there's a little bit of emotional clouding there where it's just like, we're finally ready for this to happen. So give it the 10 out of 10. Movie of the year every year.
And they're gonna soak up all of it because Marvel's been doing what they've been doing since the earlier part of the 2000s.
Yeah, well, it's been almost 10 years now with Marvel
Yeah.
and MCU. So I think as much as I still like the Marvel train, a lot of people are getting a little bit tired of it because they're starting to kind of let wheels spin a little bit, and they're getting the movies are starting to have the same tone and stuff like that to it. So Not to say they're bad, just that they're...
we'll see. We'll see when we get later on with Ragnarok coming out this year, correct?
Yeah, and they just released the Black Panther teaser, so...
Did they?
Yeah.
I have yet to see that.
Yeah.
So I'm not really in the loop and everything because we're always at work.
Sure.
We're always at work. And if we're not at work, we're sleeping.
Yeah. So, in terms of the Wonder Woman for this, I think that this is a great adaptation. I'm not exactly sure where to start because this is a really solid adaptation, and I've been digging a little bit into the comics just to kind of get prepared for it. And this is as good as an interpretation of it you're going to find. Like, people have been comparing it to Donner's Superman, even though it's not on that level. But like from some, you don't read the comics much.
No, I do not get my my graphic literature in, as we would say.
I just got done reading Mark Waid, so.
No, I don't get a lot of comics in because I'm never out towards the Plainfield, Naperville area, so I can go to my local graham cracker, or we do have now a local comic book shop in Lockport, but I never have time to stop there. I never have time to just go, oh, hey, I'm going to stop at the comic book store real quick, go pick up an issue of Wonder Woman, or go pick up a $380 first edition Spider-Man or something like that, and say, yeah, hey, I guess I got a bunch of comics now.
Even the trades are expensive.
Yeah.
So.
All my focus is towards everything else at this point.
But yeah, in terms of the movie itself and its quality, I thought it was very, very well done. I think the moment that it kind of clicked for me was the moment where she kind of climbs the trench and she walks into the field of battle and starts deflecting bullets.
Yeah, it's like a whole change of perspective in a sense of if the DC universe was actually real, it's like, that's how it should have been.
Yeah, like I think up to that point in the movie, like the first act's a little bit clunky because they kind of just drop you into the Amazon island and they don't explain much right off the bat.
The backstory and everything.
Yeah, so it takes a little bit for it to get moving. But once Chris Pine shows up, and he's amazing, by the way. Once he shows up and he starts doing his decent good guy wants to kind of help people spy thing, it starts kicking into gear, and it kind of starts moving forward as we start learning about the war. And what makes the movie work more than anything else is just the fact that Gal Gadot really plays empathy well. She plays her emotions and her sadness for the horror that's happening, like outside of her island, and her need to kind of go out there and stop it really well. I think more than anything else in the film, that and her relationship with Chris Pine's Steve Trevor, both of those things kind of work together really well, and it really kind of adds to the emotional core of the film in a way that a lot of the other superhero movies don't. So much of it works in places where other movies wouldn't. So yeah. That's all the time we have for the Wonder Woman segment. Join us shortly where Adam will give us his movie recommendation for the week. Stay tuned.
Good coffee, huh? Oh my God! What are you doing in my apartment?
Hello and welcome to the final segment. Now Adam is going to offer his thoughts on his movie for the week.
Movie for the week, I would say is, it took me a while to think about this, but it's a really good film and I really like it, and you know why. John Wick.
John Wick. Excellent.
John Wick.
Excellent choice.
That film, when, I don't remember if I saw this in theaters with you, or we were in theaters when we seen the first one.
I saw it at a pre-screening in Chicago, so
we did not see it together.
You might have seen the sequel. I don't know.
I don't think I was with you with that, but John Wick has intrigued me because it's, first of all, Keanu Reeves.
My heart goes out to thee.
I know, going from Matrix to his other films that he did, I can't name any as
Bill
of right
and Ted.
now. Bill and Ted, but
true artist.
John Wick, it's action. It's John Wick. It's guns. It's It's explosions. It's people dying. His dog.
It's the purest distillation of how to do an action movie that's just an action movie.
Yes, it hit me on a little bit of levels and stuff because outside of watching John Wick, I'm also into airsoft now, and a company called EVIC. They are based out of California. They're a shop. They did a segment of John Wick.
Oh, Nerf guns or
No, it was actual airsoft guns. They used
Okay.
a high kappa from EMG, going expert in airsoft guns. But yeah, they did a segment of that, and it was really good. It was just like same camera motions, same action-y, but with non-lethal airsoft guns. John Wick, however, it fed me, and I was full after the movie because it was so good. It was well executed. All the scenery was good. The plots, dialogue, Keanu Reeves, and that's basically it for why I chose it, because it hit me in a spot that I could say this is now part of my top 3 favorite movies.
And the sequel's great too.
Yes, which I unfortunately have yet to see.
Comes out next week, so the
On DVD?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to go pick that up immediately because Keanu
It's worth
Reeves.
it. It might be better. It might be.
Oh yeah, and I can't really. It's really hard for me to talk about movies with people because I'm not analytical with movies. I don't say, "Oh yeah, what they did and how they shot the audio and all the camera angles of the film are
I think
just spectacular and blah."
I find a pure visceral reaction to a film is perfectly valid.
No, and that's how. I'm not really going to put a number on it. I'm just going to throw a dart at this. 65, I'll say 65, 70% of anybody who watches a movie does not watch it analytically.
Exactly.
Because they're just watching it for entertainment.
Exactly.
And that's all that they are to me.
I think that's lost on critics sometimes because you meet those like snooty critics that just,
Yeah,
like, they hate
the ones
everything.
that give really bad reviews on really good movies. I remember like the first week, don't quote me on this though, I think it was like when Star Wars 7 came out.
Yeah.
Didn't it get like a 35 on Rotten Tomatoes?
It might have at some point, but
It was like the first like week before it released when Hollywood was watching their films and stuff, and they were showing the Hollywood version of it, and it got like a 40, like maybe a 35, 45% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was just like, why is this movie being so like rated so badly?
it
Why?
happens sometimes. That's all for this week on the show. You can find more of our backlog of the episodes of this show at the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. We can find reruns of the podcast where he makes several appearances. You can find more of my reviews at theantisocialcritic.tumblr.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at antisocialcriti. That's critic without the C at the end. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a wonderful day.